Shalom, all praises to the Most High. Noka said, praise be to the Kahi, the Holy Spirit, in the name of his only begotten Son, Motsah the Lamb, unification to the nation. So there's going to be part two, and it's going to be a bit different because we're not necessarily speaking about the ancient Mexicans. Now we're going to move on to the current Mexicans and the current environment, right? Because there are different sorts of Mexicans. There are not just one group of Mexicans. There are white Mexicans, there are Arab Mexicans, there are Middle Eastern Mexicans, there are Chinese Mexicans. You know, there's Jaredite Mexicans, there's Israelite Mexicans, and among those Israelites you have different looking Israelites. So you don't know who's who. And you also have the people who look just like Israelites who are Edomites. You have people who look like Edomites who are Israelites. So we don't know who's who. That being said, I think there's a lot of important documentation that has been done on the Mexican that show us exactly who they are even in a modern day setting, because people don't believe, or at least a lot of Mexicans, they think that they're so much different from black people, when honestly a lot of them descend from black people quite recently and they just would not know. But we're going to do something that Negroes hate doing. So we're going to view this video and you'll know exactly what that thing is.
These tools that the great God has given us to fight niggas. A whip, a noose, a nightstick, a branding iron. These things strike fear into a nigga's heart. A job application. Avoid conversation with the nigga. The nigga will lie. The nigga will make excuses. He will use words he don't really know. If he gets really desperate, he may start to rap or dance.
You all testicles and no shaft.
Oh, yeah.
What happened to your shaft?
There is powerful niggardry at work here.
Who in the hell are you?
Nigga, my name is Reverend Father Uncle Rucker. No relation. In the name of white Jesus and all great white men who have come thereafter, I command our black nigger soul back to the depths of hell.
Is that all you got, nigga?
Oh, no, nigga. That's just the tip of this iceberg. Read, nigga, read! Read. Just the tip of this iceberg. Read, nigga, read! This iceberg. Read, nigga, read! Read, read, read!
So that's what we're going to be doing today. If you guys are like Tom here, then, you know, you guys might not enjoy this video. But you're going to have to deal with my crappy ass reading. Because, you know, that's what niggas don't like to do. They don't like to read. So, you know, let's just sit back, chill on this beautiful Sabbath day. Not really beautiful. I prayed for the rain this morning. Hopefully it rains on these people, so they're not firing off fireworks every 5 goddamn minutes. But we'll see if the Most High has heard my prayers. I have faith that he will take care of me in that regard. He takes care of me in many regards. But I hope that he will send the angel of water. If I can remember what it's called. Barakel. I think that's what it's called. I think that's what he's called. Hopefully he comes and stops these niggas from firing off these fireworks. Anyway, let's start. So let's start from here. The authors in this volume take on that critical terrain, probing moments and spaces of conflict where diverse populations confronted each other and in the process challenged the ideological and institutional constructs of Southern society. So in the South, there wasn't supposed to be all that much race mixing going on because it was very segregated, right? But when you keep people apart, that makes them want to come together more. You know, that's kind of why you had all the black men and white women procreating with each other. Because it made them seem better than what they actually are. because you kind of have to do that. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like you wanting a chocolate bar because you've never had it, and then once you eat it, it's like, what in the hell did I want this for? This chocolate bar has no body, has zero curves. Let me chill. But anyway, these crises were more frequent and more visible in the Southwest, particularly Texas and Oklahoma, where large populations of American Indians and Mexicans and smaller communities of Asian and Southern European immigrants confounded attempts to impose a black-white template on multiracial communities. So, in majority, those people are American Indians and Mexicans, and even Southern Europeans. Some Southern Europeans are Israelites. Some Asians are Israelites, so you really wouldn't even know, even just because they're Asian or European. That doesn't mean anything. So I have to also point that out. But we do know for sure that the people of the Americas are indeed descendants of the Israelites. The focus on the South's geographical margins is not surprising. As Geraldine Pratt has argued, and a wide range of scholars have demonstrated, borderlines are especially useful spaces for exploring complex identities because they are saturated with inequality, domination, and forced exclusion. They are social and political constructs that are used to construct differences. So the whole notion of race was made to divide and confuse people. That's what you do. Like, why do you guys keep using black? Why do you guys keep using white? Why do you guys do this? Why? Why do you do this? That's not what the scripture says to do. It says to use genealogy. If you don't have genealogy, use the spirit. But you can literally use history to figure out who the Israelites were, at least. What did they look like? I don't go up to Mexicans and say, oh, you're an Israelite. No, I say, hey, the original Mexicans look like this. The other Mexicans who came look like this. They're both Israelites. If you feel like you are, hey, you might be. That's all I do. I don't tell people that they're Israel. But they are also relational places where individuals live and construct themselves in relation to each other. So, if they relate to each other, then they're going to come together. This volume centers on the Southwest, but also pushes beyond it to argue persuasively for a recasting of race throughout the entire South. And if the South cannot sustain conventional understandings of black and white, then our conceptualizations of race in the United States and North American territories must dramatically recast. Because the notion of race makes no sense. You can have someone who has a white father and a black mother that looks black, and you consider them more of an Israelite than someone who looks so-called Mexican. That's confusion. And that's stupidity. I don't dwell in stupidity. The complex dynamics of race in the United States are rooted in the nation's long history of enslavement, conquest, and immigration. Millions of Africans, right? See, and this is a hijack, but it's not necessarily fully wrong. They shipped people to Africa, then brought some back, and then they forced people to mix in with these people, you know, who still are Israelites, but they were in Africa for like 100 years or so. So now they're going to look more like Africans now when they came back here, but they didn't bring that many over here. They didn't. But they brought them back as slaves after they were able to, you know, get them off the land, and they don't know anything about their land. That's why you have everyone in the West Indies saying, oh, they took us from our land and brought us to Babylon, because they think that they're African now. When a lot of them were brought, not even a lot. It's not even a lot. That's the thing. It's not a lot. Most people in the West Indies are still, you know, not pure-blooded Indians, but they're more Indian than anything else. And then they also called all the European blacks, or the Israelites that they brought from Europe, they labeled them as Africans as well. But anyway, were forcibly transplanted to North America's soil. And despite cultural and later legal prohibitions on sex and marriage between them and Anglo Americans, large numbers of blacks were coerced into sexual relations with their white owners, and a far smaller number crossed racial lines voluntarily. So there was a lot of raping going on. There was a lot of, hey, I have money. That man doesn't have money. Come mate with me. You know how many black people are unions of that? Of bedwenching? And you guys want to be on this black stuff? Half of these people aren't even your people, and you're on that stuff. It doesn't make any sense. You're in confusion. Some of these people who are rioting are probably those same children, those same Edomites. I don't know who anyone is. What's wrong with y'all, man? Moreover, Africans and African Americans did not engage in intimate intercourse only with Euro Americans. They also formed sexual liaisons and long-term relationships with American Indians, Mexicans, and Mexican Americans, and other groups considered not quite white, because they're lighter skinned and they're closer looking to white people than so-called black people, but they're not the same people. That's why white people have an easier time accepting Mexicans than they do black people. It really is only based on how they look. That's really about it. It's not because they're closer related to them. Now, some of them can be because they're children of Cortez, but other than that, no, not really. Meet any indigenous Mexicans, they don't really like white people. They just don't. They call them pink people, and they run from them. Like, you guys have a different conceptualization of the type of people who I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Cortez's or Columbus's children or the soldiers' children. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about my brothers who may look like the enemy, some who don't. It is what it is. By the 18th and early 19th centuries, mixed race and multiracial communities have formed throughout the South, most notably in the Carolinas, Florida, and the Southwest, even as white legislators and courts worked with increasing diligence to impose a biracial order on the region. By pushing groups one isolated from each other, Indians, African Americans, and Mexicans into intimate proximity, military and political efforts to dominate the North American continent contributed mightily to creating the very racial heterogeneity that civic leaders sought to eradicate or obscure. So they were pretty much trying to mix everyone up to destroy them. And that's what it says in Revelation 12. However, in this case, Israelites also married other Israelites who were different looking or from different cultures, which also honestly can be a problem too in its own regard. That's for another video. In addition, massive immigration from Europe, Asia, and the Caribbean and elsewhere assured that racial mingling would increase, even if from particular forms of race mixing differed by region and over time. Finally, late 19th century imperial ventures added territories such as Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Hawaii, with their own complex racial traditions, into the American fold, bringing more quote-unquote people of color under U.S. authority. Despite this history, the ability of economical and political powerful whites to insist on biracial categories as the bedrock of the U.S. society meant that challenging the black-white dichotomy and the power relations it was intended to enforce was fraught? Is that a word? Those fought with peril. Indians, for example, who forged communal and familial bonds with African Americans, found themselves having to choose between traditions of racial assimilation and conflict with the federal government, resulting in welfare in the 19th century and struggles over tribal recognition and limited benefits in the 20th. That is what I was been trying to tell people. The reason why Indians, they have this racial view on so-called African Americans is because it was pushed by the government. The government was saying, if you keep mingling with those people, you're going to lose your tribal recognition. And they were just like, whoa, I ain't no African, pretty much. I'm an Indian. Let me stay away from those Africans, and none of us are Africans. But this is what the government did. This is what Edom did. Because they did not like what was going on. They didn't like it. At first they were like, oh, let's mingle them up to destroy them. It didn't work. So they were just like, okay, let's unmingle them now. That's pretty much what happened. Poor Mexicans whose agricultural labors marked them as like blacks in the South's racial and economic hierarchy were subjects to forms of discrimination and abuse similar to those visited upon African Americans. Whoa. So it didn't matter how they looked. It didn't matter how light-skinned they were. If they were poor, you were treated just like the so-called black people, because you are just pretty much a yellow nigger. You're just a short yellow nigger with a big nose. That's all you are. That's all you are, or a short brown one with a big nose. That's all you are. You're no different. Thus, as racism in the United States continued to be framed in black and white, those who identified with these bifurcated categories and those who did not embraced a variety of strategies to function within and against such dichotomous constraints. Still, the system of domination was never total, a fact that was especially clear in areas inhabited by large numbers of Caribbean, Mexican, or American Indian peoples. Let me see how much is left. Let's just keep reading. My own research and conditions in late 19th and early 20th century Tampa Bay, Florida, brought me to, I don't know if that's Tampa Bay, Tampa, Florida, brought me, that's the football team, I think so, brought me face to face with both the stubborn grip of the South's black-white divide and persistent challenges to it. Teaching at the University of South Florida in Tampa. All right, let's move down. Distinct ideas about race, religion, and empire were forged in North America's Spanish colonies, such as Catholic traditions, converged with harsh New World traditions. Writing on slavery in early Florida, Jane Landers notes that, as the other Spanish colonies, slavery was not exclusively based on race. A slave's humanity and rights and liberal manumission policy eased the transition from slave to citizen. Because of the sparse settlement and wilderness environment of Florida in the 17th and 18th centuries, a significant number of African and African Americans in the region remained free, gained high status occupations, and took up arms in defense of Spanish interests. In addition, intermarriage was fairly common, especially between black women and Spanish men, creating a free community that incorporated individuals across a broad spectrum of race, color, and class. Hey, so a lot of people in Florida, they're unions of the Spaniards and black women. Same way, people are a lot more mixed than you think they are. You think that they look white, or you think that they look black, and you think, oh, he goes through this, therefore he's my people. You don't know who he is. You don't know who he is. There's been a lot of mixing going on. I'm just saying. Only in the early to mid 1800s did military conquest bring the Gulf Coast territories under U.S. authority. Spanish, Caribbean, and Mexican influences remained powerful in the region long after its official incorporation into the United States. For example, even when Florida was written into Southern American history, It was largely as a refuge for runaway slaves and and oh wow, uh, recalcitrant, 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 recalcitrant. Let me look this up.
Recalcitrant.
Okay, stubbornly resistant, stubbornly resistant to or defiant to of authority or guidance. So, yeah, didn't they have that whole thing about how you can't enslave an Indian? That's why they have to bring them to Africa or bring them to the Caribbean. They brought all of the leaders and all of the worst behaved Indians to the Caribbean to so-called break them, and it didn't happen. But they brought them there. That was the hardest bondage. That's why I understand you damn American Negroes. You guys were, you guys owned your own land. We actually went through slavery in the Caribbean. I don't know what the hell you guys went through. You guys own your own land and, pray to Jesus and go to church and, bro, get out of here with that, man. We didn't own a damn thing in the Caribbean. We had it so hard in the Caribbean. So hard. After Andrew Jackson's 1817 raid convicted Spain. All right, let me just move down because this is a lot of words. I'm messing up. The Seminole Nation continued to harbor fugitive slaves, some of whom had married into the tribe. When the U.S. government sought to resettle Florida Seminoles in the Indian Territory of Oklahoma, a minority refused to go. Under the leadership of Osokola, they fought a 7-year guerrilla war against federal troops, seeking to end the conflict in 1838. General Thomas Cindy Jessup offered to send mixed-race insurgents, that is, those with African American and Indian blood, to Oklahoma to allow the pure-blood Seminoles to remain in Florida, assuming that such racial divides existed and could be turned to political advantage. Jessup was surprised when Seminoles refused his offer. Whoa. Fighting continued until U.S. forces used deceit to capture Escola. I don't know if I'm saying that right. If I'm not, whatever, man. But, okay, it goes to show you, these people ain't so different if they refused it. That's it. I definitely suggest you guys get this book. I'm going to show you what the book is called real quick. Beyond Black and White, Race, Ethnicity, and Gender in the U.S. South and Southwest. Just from the first couple of pages, it seems like a good book. So go cop on that. This is also from the book. I was able to get this. So let's read this real quick. Prince wrote that the offspring of Mexican and black marriages were so numerous in El Paso that they were called Negro burros, or black donkeys. In Mexico, according to Price, many of these mixed-race persons were considered Mexicans or considered Mexican and occupied important positions in Mexican social circles. They often frequented the best theaters, restaurants, and Mexican hair salons, married Mexican women, and if Democrats were able to vote in the Democratic primaries in Texas, which otherwise barred. I don't even know what that word is. It's a simple word, but I don't know what it is. Barred. I don't know what it is. That's wild, bro. This person is one of those fancy talking people. See, I dropped out of elementary school, so I had to teach myself how to read. So that's why I'm having a tough time right now. His point was that the vast majority of El Paso Mexicans who were not of the middle class did not think of themselves as white, and that El Paso blacks also did not regard Mexicans as white. Price, angered by the manner in which Mexicans objected to being labeled as colored, ended his long letter with some racial invective of his own. Now listen to this. Though once pure Indians, he wrote, Mexicans had become more mixed than dog food. Undoubtedly a conglomeration of Indian with all races known to man, with the possible exception of the Eskimo. Whoa. So that's important because we're going to get into that. Because people, when they got here, they were saying that these people, all these Indians are related other than like, the Eskimos who could be partially related to them. So that's what they were saying. Price's letter brought a series of angry rebuttals from Mexicans who denounced Price as a coward for using a pseudonym. They could not... Bro, Mexicans are crazy, bro. They wanted to find this dude. They could not find his name in the city directory. Why do you want to do that for? Oh, man. One writer, Abraham Aurelia Grenier, accused Negroes of deserving their inferior status as having tolerated oppressive conditions that no Mexican ever would. He boasted of the high level of culture attained by his Indian ancestors and belittled Negroes as descendants of savage tribes from Africa, where they practiced cannibalism and did nothing to improve their lives. What in the hell? Do you guys even know what the Toltecs were doing? These people were cannibals. They were selling body parts in supermarkets. They were wearing the skins of people. These people were complete Luciferians. What are you talking about? And maybe you're just an Edomite who's acting like you're an Indian. Like, what in the hell? Who even speaks like that? Savage tribes from Africa? Like, the Toltecs weren't savage tribes their damn selves. Like, learn your own history. Or your own so-called history, maybe on your mother's side. He reminded Price that American Negroes, as former slaves, did not have their own country or flag, and that there was no honor for those who did not understand the meaning of liberty. See, and everyone says this is why I constantly say that Black Americans, they fit the description of the Israelites more than anyone else on earth. However, that does not mean that no one else is. That's just letting you know where the focus is on, where the heat is on. Because everywhere else, they have some sort of culture. It's a BS culture, but they have some sort of culture. It's a slave culture, but they have some sort of culture. When Negroes, when they try to rep the American flag, they look like dumbasses. But Jamaicans don't look like dumbasses. Mexicans don't look like dumbasses. Peruvians don't look like dumbasses. Puerto Ricans don't. To me, they all do. But that's because I know better. And people are really stupid in this regard. Because my father's best friend, his ex-wife's mother, she was getting mad at her because she's a so-called Dominican. And she was like, oh, like, how could you marry a Negro and this and that? And then she told her mom, he's not even a so-called Negro. He's actually half Native American and half Puerto Rican. He just looks like that. And then that's when her mom was like, oh, why didn't you tell me? You should bring him over for dinner. I'm like, what in the... that's how dumb people are. But that's what I mean. We're all separated. Don't take it that personal. When people are spitting all this racial stuff that's almost worse than how the Edomites are treating us, don't take it that serious, man. We are destroyed and we have no self-esteem. I don't know why any short little Mexican would have anything to say about us. No disrespect. I still love you guys, but on the real, like, what are you gonna say about us, bro? What are you gonna say? There's nothing to say. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, we're better. No, we're not better. But I'm saying there's nothing to say. You are in the same position as us. You crawl out of garbage dumps and you go pick things in the field. How are you any better than us? some of you guys, you don't live in New York, so you don't understand how awful the inner cities are. The inner city is terrible. The projects have one way in and one way out. You cannot you can't leave. If someone wanted to rob you or jump you, they know exactly how to do it. What are you going to do about it? If cops want to stop you, they want to go outside your building, they have you controlled. Bunch of black rats trapped in a building, and it's not even only black people. In fact, I dare say that there's more Caribbean so-called Latinos in the projects here than there are black people. Dare I say, because they go through immense poverty. Immense poverty. Let's finish this. In a final stroke of racial arrogance, Gina wrote that Mexicans would never tolerate any race claiming to be superior to Mexicans because such superiority does not exist. Hey, talk your ish, short boy. These middle-class Mexican Americans in El Paso sought to eliminate once and for all the ambiguity surrounding Mexican racial identity. First, they recognized that any attempt to define them as non-white could easily come to mean non-citizen as well, because many Anglos did not regard Mexicans, particularly of lower class, as true Americans or fit for American citizenship. So there you have it. You're going to have a bunch of Mexicans who claim white because when they claim colored or anything that's non-white, they think of it as non-citizen. And I want to speak English forever. So they are going to claim anything that they need to be citizens because they come from a place where it's corrupt as hell. You have mothers and children who are trying to get over the border, and you have so-called white people using them as target practice and saying, well, it's okay, they're illegals. Sick bastards. But that's the position that they're in. You have to understand, a lot of this racial tension that's between us as Israelites is brought upon by the government, and part of it is based on your racial identities. They have you get so caught up in these racial identities so you will enslave yourselves. So stop using black, stop using Mexican, stop using white, stop using Latino. If you're going to use something, say copper colored, because they can't get around that, because we're all copper colored, right? Second, middle class Mexican Americans themselves drew distinctions between them and lower class Mexicans, whom they often regarded as Indios or Indian Americans, and used terms like mulattoes or wetbacks and other terms of class and racial disparagement. You will even have dark-skinned Mexicans call other Mexicans mulattoes and stuff like that. Bunch of ignorance. But just because they're dark-skinned, what does that mean? That doesn't mean a damn thing. So it's not that simple. It's not the Mexicans versus the Mexicans. No, it's the Israelite Mexicans with the Israelites blacks versus the Edomite Mexicans and the Edomite blacks. That's what it's really about. But you cling on to these racial identities. When you cling on to your racial identities, you're clinging on to massa. I'm just keeping it a bean. I'm keeping it 100. Hamilton Price, the black El Pasoian, pointed out as much when he reminded El Pasonians about the close, even intimate relations that existed between blacks and lower class Mexicans in El Paso, from Mexican men shining the shoes of African American men to African American men marrying Mexican women. So that's all I was able to get because, I don't have the book. But this is definitely a good book to check out. But now we're going to end with this. So let me take a little water break real quick. Okay. Whew, that's some good water. Okay, let's begin here. So this person, these are people who weren't having any sort of religious agenda. They're just trying to do research. They're just doing research They're not coming with any real bias. The only bias they have is a non-religious, is a non-religious bias. That's why they'll completely disregard the giants and the pygmies and things of that sort. But you have to combine things. You have to take things here a little, there a little. So while this person doesn't believe in the giants and the pygmies and all the religious aspects of things, he will tell you things. He will tell you things that totally go against what these other religious people say. They'll tell you the truth that these are the lands of the giants, but they won't tell you the truth about who these people are. These people will tell you how these people looked, but they won't tell you that they're Israelites. Other people say, oh, the Israelites were here, but they all died. So try to form the story from all these lying crackers. Oh man, I really hope. Whatever. The intellectual genius of antiquity justly excites our admiration and homage, but in vain when we search its records for the physical traits of some of the most celebrated nations of past time. It is even gravely disputed whether the ancient Egyptians belonged to the Caucasian or to the Negro. Why is that disputed? Because it was both. The original Caucasian, or at least one of the sources of who the Caucasian people are the Canaanites. And the original, or the majority of the population of Egypt, comes from one of the sons of Ham, Mizraim. It was not, and also the Negroes would also have to do with the Israelites as well. It was not, and was it not for the light which now draws upon us from their momentous and their tombs, this question might remain forever undecided. No, it's decided. But this is my point. Some people, they have hidden agendas. At least this person will say, the truth. You can tell that they're writing in an objective way. The present age, however, is marked by noble zeal for these inquiries, which are daily making man more conversant with the organic structure, the mental character, and the national affinities with the various and widely scattered tribes of the human family. Among these aboriginal inhabitants of America claim our especial attention. This vast theater has been thronged from immemorial time by numberless tribes which lived only to destroy and be in turn destroyed, without leaving a trace of their sojourn on the face of the earth. Contrasted with these were a few civilized communities whose monuments awaken our surprise without unfolding their history, and he who unraveled their mysteries may be compared in the language of the poets to a man standing by the stream of time, to striving to rescue from its waters the wrecked and shattered fragments which float onward to oblivion. Okay, I think the next part he's going to finally actually talk about something important. It is not my present intention to even enumerate the many theories which have been made advanced to, in reference to the origin of the American nations, although I may, in the sequel, inquire whether their genealogy can be traced to the Polynesians or Mongoloids or Mongolians, Hindus, Jews, or Egyptians. The reason why he's labeling all these people is because all of these, either the people are there or they have the cultures of all these people. Now they definitely have the culture of all five of those people, but who are these people? That's the question. So you can get that question by research. I don't know if there were other people here, but I know the majority of people here were Israelites before the Spanish came. Nor shall I attempt to analyze the views of certain philosophers who imagine that they have found not only a variety of races, but several species of men among the aborigines of this continent. It is chiefly my intention to produce a few of the more strikingly characteristic traits of these people to sustain the position that all the American nations, excepting the Eximau, are of one race, and that this race is peculiar and distinct from all others. So he is saying that the people of the Americas are very different from almost everyone else, because they're not very mixed up. They're not as mixed up as you think that they are. They're probably mixed up with Shemites, but to a large degree they're not very mixed, because Israel wasn't allowed to do all that much mixing. So you people thinking that everyone was just a black African, hey, believe what you want, man. I'm gonna do research over here. Wow, I cannot believe I forgot to include something. Hopefully I'll remember where it is when I look for it. Physical characteristics. So it is an adage among travelers that he who has seen one tribe of Indians has seen all. That's an adage. So much do the individuals of this race resemble each other, notwithstanding their immense geographical. Oops. 1 second. Alright, I had to turn off that air conditioner real quick, because that's going to get loud. Notwithstanding their immense geographical distribution and those differences of climate which embrace the extremes of heat and cold. So they're saying that they live in all different parts. The ones who are in extreme heat or extreme cold, they all look the same. So the half-clad Fujian, shrinking from his dreary winter, has the same characteristic ligaments, though in an exaggerated degree, as the Indians of the tropic palms or plains, tropical plains. And these again resemble the tribes which inhabit the region west of the Rocky Mountains, those of the Great Valley of Mississippi, and those again which skirt the Eximau on the north. All possess alike the long, lank black hair, the brown or cinnamon skin, the heavy brow, the dull and sleepy eye, the full and compressed lips, the salient but diluted nose. What does that sound like? That literally can sound like any one of us. Because he's going to tell you that all these different people, they can even have different traits, but they still all look the same. Because this video is kind of long, I'm going to try to hurry it up. It cannot be questioned that physical diversities do occur equally, singularly, and explicable. I don't know, bro. I'm sorry. This video is very long. As seen in different shades of color, varying from a fair tint to a complexion almost black. Should I read that again? In different shades of color, varying from a fair tint to a complexion almost black. And this too under circumstances in which climate can have little or no influence. So it doesn't matter where these people live. That's why you have, people in the Caribbean who are mad light skinned or very dark skinned, who are that close to the equator, because that doesn't really affect anything. Now, these facts, however, are mere exceptions to a general rule and do not alter the peculiar physiognomy of the Indian, which is as undeviatingly characteristic as that of the Negro. They look like Negroes. They might vary in skin complexion and hair texture, but they all look like Negroes. They're all built like Negroes. That's what they're saying. For whether we see him in the athletic Carib, or the stunted Chima, and the dark Californian, or the fair Borroa, He is an Indian still and cannot be mistaken for being any other race. Now, what I didn't remember to look up was the Borroa. Now, couldn't find Borroa. It sounds like Boricua. That's what I thought it was originally. And it could be. It could have something to do with it. But there literally is a last name called Berroa. Now, let me see if I can find where this last name is located for you. But the last time I looked, it was located mainly in the Dominican Republic and in Spain. In southern Spain, to be exact. So, wait a minute. How can something be both in southern Spain in a high degree and in the Dominican Republic in a high degree? How can that be the case? He's calling these Indians the Borroa, the light-skinned or fair-skinned Borroa Indians. But they also have a family crest. They're also in Europe. You know what that lets me know? It lets me know that these people, a lot of these people who people say, oh, they're Spaniards. It's not that they come from Spain, it's that they were shipped to Spain. They have a coat of arms. You have people who look like this with the last name Borroa. Or this. Or this. Or this. Or you can have people who look like this. Or this. There's no set look. Because when it comes to last names, you either converted them, you had them when you came from England as a slave or an Israelite, or you had them as a slave master. But my point being is that people think that, like, just because you're so-called Spanish or you're from Spain or things of that sort, that means that you're a heathen. It can mean that. So when people are saying, well, I'm Spanish, I'm from Spain, they could be a heathen or they literally could be an Israelite. If they share DNA with them, it's probably because they ship so many of them to there. But that's about it, man. I'm going to leave both of these in the description. I did a whole video on this topic already. You guys could, but you guys should definitely read this because this is a person who's going to tell the truth. Because this person doesn't have any sort of, hidden agenda. He's literally being pretty objective as far as I can tell. With the Borroa, they have a family crest or a coat of arms. And this is Italian. You'll realize that a lot of Italians, or at least the original Italians, before they mixed in more, they look pretty similar to, people from the islands. Like, it's not as simple as people make this stuff out to be. I don't even know that much myself. Let's look up coat of arms real quick because I actually saw something. At one point, you have all these these lions here because who was ruling England? Tribe of Judah. You have this. This is the imperial seal of Japan. Also, the Zuni had that same seal. So that's it, guys. Very long video, but I hope you guys got something good out of this. Until the next one, shalom.